Hey everybody, some Gadget Guy here, spending a little quality time with the camera on the Lumia 640 XL. While it's an entry-level phablet, Microsoft is packing in some decent camera tech with a 13-megapixel sensor paired with Zeiss optics capable of shooting 1080p video. Starting off with some brightly lit outdoor shots. It was another windy, cloudy day in LA and the light was a little softer for the 640. The sensor does a respectable job of exposing for bright objects in direct sun. We haven't completely clipped the highlights on this white flower and there's plenty of detail in the petals. Yellow's also fair well. It's a juicy, saturated look, but thankfully doesn't veer into cartoonish territory. Reds are always tricky on digital sensors, but the 640 manages a very even-handed exposure here. Good brightness, good saturation. We just start losing detail by having a predominantly red scene. Not bad performance at all, considering this price point. On a wider shot with lots of detail, we can see the lower bitrate is starting to lose a little info. We're averaging around a 17 megabit per second file, but it is doing a better job of representing the scene than the BlackBerry Passport we recently ran through this test. The focusing system has a lot of wobble to it. It's difficult to see this displayed while watching video playback on the phone, but moving to a computer or TV clearly shows a lot of jello as the camera scans through the shot to lock focus on your subject. Macro shots are surprisingly good on this sensor lens combination. I was able to position my subject closer to this camera than any other phone I've reviewed in the past. This provides a nearly flagship phone level of background blur and produces some of the nicest bokeh I've seen on any phone. Not any phone at this price, any phone period. It's terrifically handy for magnifying small objects. This tiny white bougainvillea blossom, for example, is about the size of my pinky nail, and we can blow it up quite a bit on this video. The zoom test is somewhat disappointing. With 13 megapixels on tap, there's plenty of resolution to play with for pixel resampling or cropping, but instead we're left with a somewhat ugly blown up image, which just smears all of the edges of this palm tree. It's not very pretty at all. No image stabilization means our walking test is going to be pretty jerky. I've been a bit spoiled of late playing with some fantastic flagship cameras, and it is eye-opening to look at all the samples from the 640, how twitchy my hands are, and see how well more expensive phones can compensate for my shakes. Onto our traffic test, the camera does a very good job of tracking movement as cars travel through the scene. The autofocus is agile in good light and rarely gets stuck or confused. We also see respectable dynamic range. Only white cars are clipping. The lower bitrate seems to be muting some of the color info as the sky feels a bit dull here, but overall it's solid performance. No surprise, our freeway test reports back similar results. Good color, fairly stable autofocus. It's not the sharpest video we've ever seen, especially looking at the trees, but we thankfully avoid ugly moire buzzing in the foliage. Audio here obviously won't compare to more expensive Lumias, but it handily competes with mid-ranger Android handsets and a few flagships. Noise reduction isn't completely wrecking the sound. Now transitioning from dark to bright and back, this has never really been a strong suit of any Windows phone. We often see really hard stepped transitions instead of a pleasant bloom when changing exposure. The 640 performs slightly better adjusting for brighter situations than adjusting for darker ones, but it's ultimately not that pleasant in effect. Into some nighttime shots and whoa, holy lens flare, Batman! Streetlights and headlights cut a slash of illumination throughout the shot. The 640 actually manages to hang with more expensive cameras here as its autofocus maintains a decent fix without getting confused. Even the Lumia 1020 would often get stuck on shots like these. While you would expect a low light shot to be noisy, there's just a bit more chroma noise, the colorful noise, than I would like, which we can see more of along with more lens flare on our creepy tunnel shot. I absolutely love that this camera isn't trying to overexpose this setup. It's appropriately dark and the camera doesn't have to mess with destructively higher ISO or scaling back the frame rate. I wish more cameras would follow suit on underexposing low light shots like these. Our creepy gate is also an appropriate mustardy yellow. This might be a touch warm, but the white balance here is pretty close to the quality of the awful security light illuminating this alley. And our walkway, we can accurately see the color temperature difference between these two bulbs. The direct illumination is keeping noise at bay. Very nice exposure considering the lighting contrast, and we're not completely blowing out the lights here. Very nicely exposed. So where's that leave us with the camera on the Lumia 640 XL? This is a good camera, period. End of sentence. Not a good camera for the price. Just straight up a good camera. It's got some foibles to be sure, and image stabilization will be missed if you're used to that, but it's actually pretty easy to get some really pleasant images out of this shooter. Colors have a nice pop to them, there's plenty of resolution to play with for cropping, and the close focus distance makes it a solid offering for macro enthusiasts on a budget. After slogging through my review of the BlackBerry Passport, this camera was a refreshing palate cleanser as it was actually fun to use. Considering this phone is priced out around $250 when adjusting for the exchange rate, it absolutely shames most of the cameras I've played with on Android devices under the $400 price point. It's a solid update over the cameras found on the 635 and the 1320, and if that's any indication where we might be headed for future Lumias, it'll be even more difficult keeping my expectations in check for the Lumia 940. I'll of course leave some links under this video where you can find more info and shop the Lumia 640 XL. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more reviews like these, and I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you all weren't out there sharing my videos on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and Reddit. So please keep bringing more cool people to the party. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.